So the Torah tells us, God addresses Moses, says that we'll come into the land and we will make a Shabbat for the land. And then it explains, we will work the land 6 years, and the 7th year the land will rest. And right away, Hashem forewarns and says, if you will say, and what will we eat? So Hashem continues, V'tzivirti et berachati, I will command my blessing in the 6th year, and it will produce sufficiently for the 6th, 7th, and 8th years. So there is a special blessing in the 6th year. And the message is very simple. Not working 1 year out of the 7 is about trust in God, a relationship of trust. We are reminded that it is not primarily our efforts and our work that are bringing us our prosperity and success, but, as the verse says, Birchat Hashem ta'ashir, it is the blessing of God which brings wealth. Now, because of the vital importance of man working within worldly limitations, we must create a vessel for that. We must do something, and that doing something becomes what's called in Hebrew the kli, the vessel, to receive God's blessing. In the ethical works, it's referred to as hishtadlut, which is vaguely translated as effort. But it means an effort that is put forth, almost like a box, so that the blessing can become part of it. But we must not forget that it indeed is primarily the blessing of God, which brings success, something which is easy to forget. So on the one hand, we have 6 years, we have the 7th year. The 7th year, we don't work the land. We see the blessing, and we're reminded that in fact our efforts at livelihood are truly a partnership with God. Then there's another aspect, the relationship between mundane and sanctified. And this is like the 6 days in Shabbat. We work 6 days, Shabbat we take off. 6 days are mundane, 1 day is holy. We need to work 6 days because our goal is to elevate and permeate the physical world with holiness. But we also need to rest 1 day because it is a day of Shabbat when we are devoted entirely to the spiritual that charges us up so that the other days, rather than becoming pulled down by the mundane world, we are in a superior position. We take the spiritual high ground and we can elevate it. And the same is true of the 6 years of working the land and the 1 year of not working the land. In the year that we do not work the land, more time is made available to study Torah, to pray properly, to devote ourselves to spirituality. So it is this very same dichotomy. And interestingly, the Torah is commanding us not only to rest the land in the 7th year, but it specifically formulates in the way of a commandment, 6 years you should work the land. Both of those poles are imperatives. It's important to work the land for 6 years. It's important to take the Sabbath year as well. We need to have this dichotomy, this pendulum going back and forth between the most of the time when we're trying to fuse the physical world with meaning and with spirituality, and this minority of time, but powerfully charged time, which is precisely this time enabling us to fulfill this mission during the other time. And that is exactly why the Shemitah is the prototypical commandment, because it is combining these two ideas of spirituality and materiality. And that, in fact, is the essence of the Torah, to fuse together spiritual and material. And as I said, not to reject the spiritual the way that materialistic philosophies do. Not to reject the material the way that the more ascetic philosophies do, but to do the real challenge, the hard work, which is to bring it together, to be in the world while being above the world. And we see that even more emphasized in the sabbatical year itself. On Shabbat, there's very little that we can do. We can't work. On the sabbatical year, the agricultural activities are prohibited, and other activities are permissible. So we actually have a year in which some things we don't do, emphasizing our disengagement from the world, and other things that we can do, emphasizing our engagement with the world. But unlike the weekly cycle, where it's divided, where the 6 days is engagement and day number 7 is disengagement, the sabbatical year is a time where the paradox is embodied by the fact that we have in the year itself both engagement in the world through the other activities that we do and disengagement from the material through the refraining from the agricultural work.